I also want to thank the folks at VIP and Postlight for having us and for having me here. And so we're going to talk about paywalls. So first, just a little bit about me and some of the things I've done or places that I've worked and things that I do where I'm at now. So I've been in product in New York City for over 15 years. And in all that time, I've worked on a variety of different content brands. So from Zagat, which you may have been back in the news, publishing their book for the first time in a number of years, and to now at Commercial Observer and Observer as part of Observer Media, which is sort of more of a straight up kind of media publishing companies. And yeah, so if you want to reach me, you can reach me on all the socials at Entin. So a little bit more about Commercial Observer, and apologies for the smaller font. So Commercial Observer, we are the leading commercial real estate media property. So we've been around for about 10 years. We're headquartered here in New York City in the financial district. We are part of Observer Media, which is a holding company for us and for Observer, which used to be the New York Observer, which was a print publication that actually was the origin of Sex and the City and Rex Reed, the movie critic. And we mostly cover New York, but we also cover Los Angeles and Washington, D.C. Oh, wow, this is really small. So this was not the font size that I had specified. So let's hope the images came through bigger. So some examples of what we do. So some of the things that we write about. So we write about retail leases. We write about office space. We write about financing and construction. We are actually still in print. We publish a magazine in print 43 times a year. And we write a lot about WeWork. And this is one of my favorite covers that we've done recently, the Shorn Unicorn. And we also do events. So we do about 17 or 18 events on commercial real estate topics in New York City, LA, and DC. So why a paywall? Wow, jeez. All the cool kids are doing it, right? So the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, Digiday, Wired. Everybody's doing it, and also everybody is with the black and white fonts. People need to get some more color in their branding. So why are we doing it? So this is a theme that you'll hear, I think, a lot when you hear publishers talking about paywalls. So it's about revenue diversification. So this is us in, also not the colors, but this is us in 2018. So this is how our revenue sort of was distributed from print advertising, digital advertising, events, and subscriptions. And so what this is really about is that we look ahead 5 years, this is where we want to get to, right? We want to become less reliant on print advertising, and we want to have our revenue coming from a more kind of evenly distributed set of sources, including subscriptions, which is direct revenue from consumers and less sort of over reliant on advertising. Wow. So this is a slide. This is what you would see when you come to our subscribe page. And so I just want to use this as an opportunity to sort of explain a little bit how we approach creating a paywall and what our different membership tiers are. So we ultimately came up with a 3-tiered membership experience or kind of product. So the first is basic membership. And so for that, essentially what we offer you is in a given month, you can read 5 articles. And if you want to read more than 5 current articles, so articles published in the last 30 days, you can do so without telling us anything about yourself or telling us your email address or taking out a credit card. But after you read more than 5 articles, you have to register and create a free account. And that way we know who you are, and we can ideally, hopefully, serve you more relevant content and market to you, obviously. And then we created the premium membership tier. And so the premium membership is essentially, if we're being honest, it's taking all of the 10 years of content that we have and giving you the ability to access all of that, which was previously available for free. But now, if you want to have access to our entire corpus of content, which, as I mentioned, we literally published 291 articles about WeWork in the last few years, you would need the premium membership. And then trying to create a sort of more enhanced Premium Plus membership option where beyond just accessing the content online, if you want to get the print magazine, if you want to get one free ticket to one of our events, that would sort of be the option for you. And so the basic membership may seem sort of familiar to you, at least in terms of you think about the New York Times or some of these kind of, use some of the jargon or sort of explain some of these things, the metered model, right? That's kind of how we're implementing that. And for us, instead of having after 5 articles a month, asking you to pay. We're asking you to tell us who you are. And what we found in our research, and so how we kind of came to this, is we did a big market research and user research project. And what we found is that there's a core group of users, and I'll talk more about this towards the end, who come to us to read the headlines every day. They want to know sort of what's going on. But those people, while they value us and trust us, they're not necessarily willing to pay for that content. They sort of expect the sort of news to be free. And so we wanted to be able to give that to them for free, and felt like just by giving us your name, email address, and where you work is not a lot to ask. And that if you're trying to sort of do more than that and sort of maybe research a company that you're interested in or a deal that you're working on and being able to access a sort of full sort of archive of content, then that's where the sort of willingness to pay changes dramatically. Okay, so how we built it. So this gets a little bit more to the technology side of things. So I'll talk through some of the pieces here. So first I want to acknowledge that our agency partners, HappyCog, two of the folks from there are here. So if we do get technical questions, I may put them on the spot, who helped us build all these things. So obviously WordPress and VIP are what our sites were already running on. So Piano, if you guys haven't heard about, is one of the bigger paywall platform providers. This could have easily been a sort of Piano talk, but essentially why we chose Piano and what Piano does. Piano does for us three things that we're sort of using them for. One is they actually are our user database. We did not have a logged in experience before, so we're using them as a user database. We are also using them as a transaction or commerce platform, so they're actually charging the credit cards, using Stripe to actually sell the subscriptions for us. And they have essentially the paywall rules management. They call the product Composer, but allows us to say people coming from this domain or people who are in this location should see this, allowed to see this content, not be allowed to see this content. The meter rules, certain things are sort of locked down. All of that sort of happens through Piano. So Issue maybe a company may not have heard of. So one of the things that we had realized is that, thinking about for publishers, the sort of assets and the kind of content that you're sitting on that you can try to create value for users, we had these 10 years of print publications that we actually had PDFs of. And so we essentially used Issue, which is essentially an online magazine reader, sort of like an e-reader, to create an online magazine library, which we made available only to paying users to be able to go back through and sort of flip through online and on mobile all the sort of magazine issues. So you'll see Google Cloud Platform and Laravel. Essentially, what those were used for was to create what we refer to as a middleware app. So to connect the different services that we have. So WordPress and Piano sort of being the core web experience, but Sailthrough is our sort of email marketing or marketing automation platform. All the emails that we send to customers go through that. And in order for the Piano to be able to know that somebody is a member and they need to get certain emails, we used that and created an app with those two products. And obviously Google Analytics is really key for us to know how users are engaging with our content. Okay, so that says, how's it going so far? Pretty good. So some of the highlights of the things that are working well. So we have quadrupled the number of free or basic members that we get per month. So essentially before we had the paywall, we had those little boxes that said, sign up for our newsletters. And not a lot of people did it. And now that we have the basic membership model, we actually get sort of 4 times as many as we did before, which is helping just sort of grow our audience overall, which is important to us for a business. We did lots of calculations and predictions and projections of how much subscription revenue we might generate, which was based on lots of things that may not have been based in reality, but we're ahead of those numbers, so we're excited about that. There was a lot of concern, and I think a lot of publishers worry, especially when you're playing the scale game. So we're a B2B publisher, so monster traffic is actually not so important to us. Building an audience of sort of the people in our industry that advertisers want to reach is more important. We did not see any meaningful hit or drop in traffic as a result of building a paywall. And using Piano, it's been really easy for us to be able to test paywall rules. So if we want to change the copy, if we want to change the rules about how long this archive window is or things like that, all that's been sort of fairly straightforward. So what hasn't worked as well? So Piano is essentially sort of in a lot of cases an embed on our site, and it's actually dramatically slowed down the site. And that's not great for SEO and other things like that. So something for us to kind of focus on in the future, next year, and things that we can do about that. Piano has great reporting. It doesn't tell us the whole story. GA has great reporting. That doesn't tell the whole story. Getting those two systems and reporting tools to kind of talk to each other to give us the sort of full conversion funnel data has been challenging, so also something we're looking to fix. And then we have tried lots of different marketing promotion offers. So get a free Fitbit, get a free tote bed, all these other kinds of things. It's the 4th of July. None of those things have worked. We've just found that like when people are trying to access the content and they hit the paywall, if they want the content, they're going to pay. Whatever offers we give them, if it's not in the time when they need the content, they're not going to pay. And as I sort of wrap up, sort of what have we learned? Quite a bit. So these sort of 3 bits at the top all are sort of somewhat related. I want to kind of explain this a little bit. So I talked to this a little bit more, which is that, at the beginning, that some of our sort of most engaged or frequent users are not necessarily the ones who are going to pay. They have a use case of, like I said, they want to stay on top of the news, they want to stay on top of the headlines. Doesn't necessarily mean that I think there's a fallacy that the people who are coming to your site all the time are the ones who are going to be willing to pay, and that's not necessarily the case, and we found that not to be the case. And these 2 different user intents. And so what we found is that the people who are most willing to pay are the people who are familiar with our site and then have done a search on Google about some topic. Maybe it's the Hudson Yards Development Project, and they've come to a search result that takes them to Commercial Observer, and they hit the paywall, and they are working on something which has meaningful business value and opportunity to them, and it's worth it for them to pay to access their content because it's going to help them sort of answer a question or give them information that's going to help them in their business, as opposed to, again, like I said, just sort of staying on top of the headlines. And the way we sort of do that, and the way that we sort of create those what I call at-bats with consumers in that way is the core of our paywall model is what we call a reverse content embargo. Essentially, any content older than 30 days is behind the paywall. And so anything sort of new is not, and we get a lot of traffic from search, and 92% of that content that traffic is to content that's older than 30 days. And so everyone coming into the site and hitting that content is a chance for us to sell someone a subscription. So other things that were not part of the original paywall strategy was for some of the issues that we do a bunch of special issues every year. A lot of these power lists, so the top 50 people in real estate financing, we found that because of issue and the way that we had the online magazine platform, we're able to make that online edition available a day early before tens of thousands of people get it in print, and people were willing to pay just to get some of those issues a day early and have it sort of a day before the competition, or in some cases to find out, did I make that top 50 list, or am I number 3 this year instead of number 5 like I was last year? Other things, and this is something that a Wired and some other publications have reported as well, the articles that you might think drive subscriptions for you are not necessarily the ones that drive subscriptions, and you might expect that, it's going to be a lot of these types of articles, but it's really a very long tail of articles that ultimately wind up driving subscriptions, aside from those list ones. Everyone wants to know who's on the list. And then this last one kind of relates a little bit to what I talked about before, where while we are acquiring more sort of free members than we did before when we had just newsletters, because we're really focused on membership, we don't sort of promote our various newsletters. We have 8 or 9 newsletters like we did before, and so while everybody gets added to our kind of main newsletter, it's been challenging for us to grow the other newsletters while we focus on marketing memberships to people. But that's something that I think we have some ideas and ways to tackle. And that's really it. I did not stand up before, but I am hiring. If any of this is interesting to you, or someone who's a product manager that this might be interesting to, I'm looking to hire a product manager to lead all this stuff at Commercial Observer. So I'll take your questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I was wondering, whenever you invest in a big platform like Sailthrough or like Piano, it's very, very powerful. There's many different ways you can use it. If you actually had them in the room with you every single day, you'd probably get along with it faster, or they'd be able to help you fine-tune things. Sometimes organizations like Sailthrough or Piano will give you kind of proactive consulting so that they can help you win, and then they win more too. Depends on how your deal is structured with them. Sometimes they have pro services. I just wanted to know, did you kind of get a turnkey solution given to you as some guidance, or did they actually help you through it? Did they do that regularly, or did you just get like a quarterly business review? I mean, how engaged is your vendor with your success?
That's a great question. So a couple of things about how and why we chose Piano. So Piano's not the cheapest solution, but it was full service, and we didn't have a lot of pieces, and so we liked the idea of working with someone that had a lot of the pieces. Also, a factor was the fact that Happy Cog, our agency, had worked with Piano before, and so that was definitely knew that we'd have a leg up in terms of implementation. In terms of what they provided, there definitely was sort of like a kickoff strategy, and they attempted to leverage some sort of other relevant clients' experience in a very kind of anonymized way to ideas for us, but we did not sort of pay, they charge separately for kind of consulting services, which we didn't pay for. But I think and I would say the same thing is true for VIP, they have excellent customer support. It's all sort of, Zendesk ticketing based. But they do that well, as VIP does, and that's been really helpful, whether it's, coming from the product team or from the engineers. That's, it's a lot of sort of, hey, we want to do this, and also account management as well. So it's very similar sort of structure to VIP in that way.
So one of the challenges in the archive access model could be I need that once, and then I don't anymore, right? And do you know what your retention looks like on those subscriptions?
Right. So, so the question was, yes, basing our model on I want to access this one article, a lot of people may not what we call pay up. That's a sort of term from they start a free trial, and so we try to create the path of least resistance where we start everybody on a free trial, though they have to give a credit card. So the pay up rate for us, I think, is kind of like maybe 45%. So people that convert from giving us a credit card for a trial and not converting. And so, nominally you might say, hey, that kind of sucks. Why isn't it 80%? But because of the model that we have, again, I go back to we have a lot of at-bats. So we're kind of going for more sort of putting more people into that process. And then doing things on our end. We have a customer service person who reaches out to people who start a trial, try to get them engaged and increase the likelihood that they'll pay up. But yeah, it's definitely lower than other models. But we're starting with a higher end. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm curious to know about when you flipped to like this reverse paywall and the archive stuff. Was there any kind of reaction to your users? Did people have access to this kind of like older stuff before, and then when you turned it on?
Yeah, so it's so the question was, what was the reaction, from people when we sort of made this switch? So a couple things. We did a bunch of advanced marketing. So we emailed people, this is coming, et cetera. We did a pre-registration kind of process so that nobody had a user account. So get people to have a user account. So at least for that use case where you're coming to read the article, the headlines every day, if you created that free account, you could kind of continue to do what you were doing. And so I think, our regular users are not necessarily the people who are regularly hitting the paywall, because the regular users are coming to read the headlines. So, but yeah, it was, if you were someone who had done a Google search and wound up on Commercial Observer from day 0 to day 1, you would have then hit that wall. But we didn't have a negative reaction, because we weren't, in essence, we weren't taking anything away from our regular users. Go ahead.
I think, paywall rules are super fun, right? Because you can really do a lot with them. How often do you find yourself modifying or testing, to kind of like maximize that sort of lifetime value? If they're not converting, do you have a kind of a separate strategy to still try to monetize on that user, knowing that they may not convert?
Yeah, so I would say we spent the first 6 months testing and doing a bunch of different kind of paywall rules. And which is not to say that we sort of had the right answer out of the gate or that we haven't tried everything, but we found that none of the things that we tested really moved the needle. And so from then we decided to shift to, let's focus on the top of the funnel. Let's try and bring more people into the site and try to, maybe we can find more lift there. And we'll come back to the paywall and test copy and test other things like that. But we spent about 6 months doing all those kinds of rules-based testing. But yeah, now we're focused elsewhere in the funnel.
So if they don't convert to a subscription model, is it more of a ad-based model or some other?
Yeah, so everybody sees ads, and so everyone who doesn't convert has already created a basic member account, and we now know more about them than we did before. And so we can try and do some win-back marketing, though that hasn't really been successful. But they're now in their database. We now know that they are an owner versus a broker, and that they're more relevant to attend event X versus event Y, and so we've gained some value and we can market to them. But so they're sort of part of the ecosystem, but yeah, that's kind of where it ends. That's it? Okay. Thanks very much. I'll be around after for more questions. Thank you.